Sometimes, a case isn't solved by brilliant detective work or a last-minute confession. Sometimes, justice arrives because of pure, dumb luck. For 14 long years, the brutal murder of a high school girl in Hiroshima Prefecture remained one of Japan's most baffling cold cases. The killer, despite being seen by 2 eyewitnesses, had simply vanished. Then, in 2018, the case finally broke. Not because of a new lead, but because a man at a construction site 100 kilometers away lost his temper and kicked his coworker. This is the story of how a random act of workplace frustration finally unmasked a ghost. Our story begins in Hatsukaichi, a quiet city on the coast of Hiroshima Prefecture. Its name literally means 20th Day Market, a nod to the bustling market that used to be held there every month centuries ago. It's a place steeped in tradition and natural beauty, a place where families felt safe. The Kitaguchi family lived in a unique, 2-part house in the Kamihira area. A single-story main building was connected internally to a 2-story annex. Here lived 17-year-old Satomi Kitaguchi, with her parents, her younger sister, and her grandmother. Satomi was the pride of the family. Her father, who had waited 5 years after getting married to have her, doted on his eldest daughter. Life was peaceful, predictable, and happy. But that peace was about to be shattered. October 5, 2004, was a Tuesday. It was an unusual school day for Satomi. It was exam day, which meant she only had to be at school for the morning. After finishing her tests, she was free to go home, a full 3 hours earlier than usual. She biked home through the quiet afternoon streets. Since it was a weekday, there were few people out and about. Around 1 p.m., she walked through her front door. Her parents were at work, but her grandmother and younger sister were home, watching TV in the living room on the first floor. Satomi said hello, grabbed a quick lunch, and ate by herself. After eating, she started to feel tired. Her part-time job wasn't until 5 p.m., so she had a few hours to kill. She headed to her bedroom, which was on the 2nd floor of the adjoining annex, to lie down and listen to some music. An hour passed. Downstairs, the TV droned on. Then, at exactly 3 p.m., a terrifying scream ripped through the quiet house. It was unmistakably Satomi's voice. Her grandmother and sister shot up from the couch and rushed to see what was wrong. They ran from the main building into the annex and up the stairs to Satomi's room. The door was slightly ajar, not locked. They pushed it open, and their world fell apart. Satomi was lying motionless on the floor next to her bed, her body covered in blood. And standing over her was a stranger, a man in his early 20s with short hair, holding a bloody knife. For a moment, everyone froze. The sister, paralyzed by fear, suddenly broke free. She turned and fled, screaming, running down the stairs and out of the house. She didn't stop until she reached a gardening shop 50 meters away, where she collapsed in tears, repeating over and over to the owner, "My sister's been stabbed. My sister's been stabbed." Back in the bedroom, the grandmother, trembling with fear, tried to back away. The attacker, startled by their sudden entrance, snapped out of his trance. He lunged forward, stabbing the elderly woman 4 times in the back before she could escape. She collapsed to the floor. The man then bolted, fleeing the room and disappearing from the house. The grandmother was grievously wounded, but the knife had missed her vital organs. With unimaginable strength, she pulled herself up. She looked at Satomi, lying beside her, and knew there was nothing she could do. But then she thought of her younger granddaughter. She didn't know if the attacker was still in the house. Clutching her wounds, she forced herself back downstairs to the living room, picked up the phone, and dialed for help. Then she collapsed. When police and paramedics arrived, they found a scene of utter chaos. The grandmother was rushed to the hospital. On the 2nd floor, they found Satomi. She was already gone. An autopsy would later reveal she had been stabbed 10 times, with the fatal wound piercing her heart. There were no signs of sexual assault. The investigation began immediately. The killer's escape route was a puzzle. If he turned left out of the house, he could slip between neighboring homes or escape down a riverbed. If he turned right, he would hit a main road with multiple escape routes. A single witness could have told them which way he went, perhaps even revealing if he was a local. But despite canvassing the entire neighborhood, they found no one. It was 3 p.m. on a weekday. The streets had been empty. The killer had simply vanished. Thankfully, Satomi's grandmother survived. After being stabilized in the ICU, she and the younger sister were able to give police a clear description of the attacker. Working with them, forensics artists created a composite sketch. A man in his early 20s, about 165 centimeters tall, with a strong build, short hair, narrow eyes, and noticeable acne. The police were confident. They had a sketch and they had hard evidence from the scene. They found several shoe prints on the floor, all from the same pair of shoes, between 26 and 27 centimeters long. They found an unknown fingerprint, and under Satomi's fingernails they found skin cells. From that tiny sample they extracted a full male DNA profile, almost certainly belonging to the killer. With a sketch, DNA, a fingerprint, and a shoe type, they thought an arrest was imminent. They showed the sketch to Satomi's family, her friends, her classmates, and people all over town. But a strange thing happened. Or rather, nothing happened. No one recognized the man in the drawing. The DNA and fingerprint didn't match anyone in their databases. The case hit a wall. The Kitaguchi family was shattered. Their grief was compounded by the fact that the man who had destroyed their lives was still out there, a ghost who had left nothing but pain in his wake. Satomi's father took the 3 million yen he had saved for her university tuition and offered it all as a reward for any information leading to an arrest. Posters with the killer's sketch went up all over Japan. Years turned into a decade. The Hiroshima Prefectural Police never gave up, investigating over 40,000 people over the years. Satomi's father started a blog, a public diary of his grief and a chronicle of the case. He wrote almost every day, for over 15 years, posting more than 4,000 entries. It was his way of keeping his daughter's memory alive, a desperate, daily plea for justice. In 2015, 11 years after the murder, the case got a jolt of new energy. A special team was brought in to re-examine the evidence, which included experts from the FBI's famed Behavioral Analysis Unit, or BAU. They re-interviewed neighbors and, using modern technology, created an updated, age-progressed image of what the suspect might look like. But even with the help of the world's best profilers, the trail remained cold. It seemed Satomi's murder was destined to remain an unsolved tragedy. And then came April 13, 2018. In the neighboring Yamaguchi Prefecture, police in the city of Ube received a call. An employee at a local construction company was reporting his boss for assault. The boss, a 35-year-old man named Manabu Kashima, had lost his temper over a work issue and kicked him. When police arrived, things had calmed down. It was a minor incident, but procedure was procedure. They had to take statements and fingerprints, especially from Kashima, the aggressor. As police prepared to take his prints, Kashima became visibly anxious and agitated. But after he apologized to his coworker, he was allowed to leave. One of the officers on scene couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about Kashima's anxiety. A few days later, he ran the man's fingerprints through the national database. Suddenly, the system lit up with an alert. The print was a perfect match. Not for a local thief or troublemaker, but for the unidentified fingerprint left at a murder scene in Hatsukaichi City, 14 years earlier. The pieces clicked into place with terrifying speed. Kashima lived in Ube, just 100 kilometers from the crime scene. He was 35 years old, which meant he would have been 21 at the time of the murder, a perfect match for the eyewitness description. Police arrested him immediately. Kashima's boss was stunned. He told reporters that Kashima had been a reliable employee for 10 years. He never missed a day, he had a good work ethic. He couldn't imagine that the quiet man who worked for him was capable of such a monstrous act. At first, Kashima denied everything. But in court, faced with the irrefutable DNA and fingerprint evidence, he finally confessed. His defense attorney argued for a lighter sentence, claiming the crime wasn't premeditated. Kashima told the court he didn't know Satomi Kitaguchi. He said he'd been riding his motorcycle that day, feeling frustrated and angry about his job. He saw Satomi riding her bike home on the nearly empty streets and, in his words, was overcome with lust. He followed her home, waited, and then broke in with the intent to sexually assault her. When she fought back with all her might, he flew into a rage, pulled out a folding knife, and stabbed her to death. His defense argued it was a crime of passion, a tragic result of accumulated work stress. But the court didn't see it that way. On March 18, 2020, the Hiroshima District Court delivered its verdict. For causing immeasurable and lasting pain to the victim's family and terrorizing society, Manabu Kashima was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison. After 16 years, one of Japan's most notorious cold cases was finally closed. For Satomi's family, it wasn't a victory, but it was a small measure of peace. After the trial, Satomi's father wrote a new entry on his blog. It simply said, "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you." To this day, he continues to write his diary, a father's unending conversation with the daughter he lost, hoping that one day he can finally move past the pain and face life again, something he believes Satomi would have wanted most of all.